I'm Jessica Rodriguez, 27, and when my dad called me last November with those 8 words, I thought I'd finally won the lottery. Let's have a quiet Christmas this year, he said, his voice unusually gentle. Just the three of us. No big production. I nearly dropped my phone right there in my Seattle apartment. After years of holiday chaos, drama, and expectations that left me emotionally drained for weeks, the idea of a peaceful Christmas felt like a miracle. Really? I asked, not daring to believe it. You mean it? Your mother and I have been talking, Dad continued. We know the holidays have been stressful. Maybe it's time for something different. I hung up that call feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since moving across the country for my software engineering job, I wouldn't have to mentally prepare for weeks of walking on eggshells around my family's holiday expectations. But as the days turned into weeks with radio silence from my parents, something started to feel off. That quiet wasn't agreement. It was the calm before the storm I should have seen coming. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and whether your family holidays are peaceful or chaotic. Trust me, this Christmas story has more plot twists than a holiday rom-com gone wrong. To understand why a simple phone call about having a quiet Christmas felt like winning the emotional lottery, you need to know about the Rodriguez family dynamics. I work as a senior software engineer at a tech startup in Seattle, having escaped my Phoenix hometown right after college graduation. I love my job, my cozy Capitol Hill apartment, and the independent life I've built for myself. But family gatherings, especially Christmas, have always been pure anxiety fuel for me. My mother, Carmen, is what my therapist, Dr. Martinez, diplomatically calls a woman with very specific expectations. She approaches holidays like a military general planning a major offensive. Every detail must be perfect. Every family member must play their assigned role, and any deviation from her vision is treated as a personal attack on her love for the family. She's the type of person who starts Christmas planning in July and has backup plans for her backup plans. My father, Miguel, is her complete opposite in many ways. He's conflict avoidant to an almost artistic degree, preferring to disappear behind his newspaper or suddenly remember urgent errands whenever Mom starts one of her holiday interrogations about my career advancement, my dating life, or why I don't call home more often. He's mastered the art of selective hearing when family tensions rise. The Christmas disasters of my childhood and young adulthood are legendary in my personal history. When I was 14, I spent 3 months babysitting to save money for a special gift for Mom, a beautiful ceramic angel I'd seen her admire at a craft fair. On Christmas morning, she opened it, held it up to the light, and said, "Oh, this is lovely, Mija, but it doesn't really match our decor theme this year." She set it aside and never displayed it. I found it months later, still in its box, shoved in the back of the hall closet. At 20, during my junior year of college, Christmas dinner imploded when my cousin started discussing his plans to drop out of pre-med to pursue music. Mom launched into a lecture about wasted potential and family disappointment that somehow pivoted to criticizing my decision to major in computer science instead of something more suitable for a young lady. I spent the rest of the evening hiding in my childhood bedroom, questioning everything about my chosen career path. But the breaking point came 3 years ago when I was 24. Mom had secretly invited her friend's son, Carlos, to Christmas dinner without warning me. She'd arranged the seating so we'd be next to each other, and spent the entire meal making increasingly obvious comments about what a nice couple we'd make and how it was time for me to think about settling down. Poor Carlos looked as mortified as I felt, especially when Mom asked if we'd already discussed what kind of wedding we'd want after we'd known each other for exactly 45 minutes. That's when I started therapy with Dr. Martinez, who helped me understand that setting boundaries with family isn't disrespectful. It's necessary for healthy relationships. She taught me about recognizing manipulation tactics, the difference between guilt and appropriate concern, and how to say no without feeling like I was betraying my heritage or my family's love. For the past 3 years, I've been working on implementing what I learned in therapy. Progress has been slow and often painful, but steady. I've learned to recognize when Mom's concern is actually a way to control my choices, and I've gotten better at deflecting Dad's attempts to guilt me into keeping the peace at my own emotional expense. So when Dad called with that suggestion about a quiet Christmas, I felt like maybe, finally, they were hearing me. Maybe they understood that our traditional elaborate celebrations were more stressful than joyful for me. I immediately called my best friend Maya, who's been my emotional support system through all my family drama. They actually suggested a quiet Christmas, I told her, pacing around my apartment in disbelief. Just the three of us. No extended family, no big production. This could be huge, Maya. Wow, Maya said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice. That's really unexpected. But good. What are you thinking of doing instead? For the first time, that question opened up possibilities I'd never considered. Christmas on my terms? The concept was both thrilling and completely foreign to me. Maybe I could actually relax, I said. Maybe we could just hang out.
Talk.
Watch movies. Be normal. That sounds amazing, Maya said. You deserve a peaceful Christmas for once. That evening, I found myself actually looking forward to December for the first time in years. I started making mental plans for a low-key holiday. Maybe we could cook together, without the pressure of impressing anyone. Maybe we could exchange simple, thoughtful gifts instead of the elaborate presentations Mom usually orchestrated. Maybe I could finally introduce them to some of my holiday traditions, like watching cheesy Christmas movies and making hot chocolate with marshmallows. But as 2 weeks passed with no further communication from my parents, I began to feel a familiar knot of unease in my stomach. Usually, Mom called or texted multiple times a week, asking about everything from my work projects to what I was eating for lunch. The silence was completely out of character, but I tried to convince myself it meant they were respecting our new arrangement. I should have known better. In the Rodriguez family, silence never means acceptance. It means someone's plotting something. Work had been particularly intense as we approached the holiday break. As the lead developer on a major client project, I was deep in debugging code when my phone rang. Seeing my Aunt Rosa's name was unusual. We typically only talked on birthdays and major holidays. Jessica, Mija, how are you? Her voice had that careful, overly sweet tone adults use when they think you might be having a breakdown. I'm good, Tia Rosa. Just busy with work before the holidays. What's up? There was a pause. Well, I wanted to ask about Christmas. Your mother seems to think you're not coming home, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay between you and the family. The cold feeling that spread through my chest had nothing to do with Seattle's December weather. Wait, what do you mean? Dad called me and suggested we have a quiet Christmas this year. Just the three of us. I thought that sounded nice. A quiet Christmas?
Aunt Rosa sounded genuinely confused.
Mija, your mother has been planning this Christmas since September. She's invited the entire extended family, your cousins from Los Angeles, your uncle from Denver, even your great-aunt from Mexico City is flying in. She told everyone it's going to be the biggest Rodriguez Christmas celebration ever. My stomach dropped as Aunt Rosa continued. She's been telling everyone that you're going through some kind of phase and that you don't want to participate in family traditions anymore. Everyone's worried about you, sweetheart. Your grandmother especially. She keeps asking what she did wrong to make you not want to come home. I felt like I'd been transported to an alternate dimension. That's not. Dad specifically said quiet Christmas. Just the three of us. I have the phone record to prove it. Well, Aunt Rosa said carefully, all I know is that your mother sent out formal invitations 3 weeks ago for Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas Day brunch. She's been calling everyone to confirm attendance. She even mentioned something about a special Christmas surprise she's planning for you. The words special Christmas surprise sent ice through my veins. In Rodriguez family speak, that usually meant an ambush of some sort, an unexpected guest, an announcement involving me that I hadn't approved, or some grand gesture that served Mom's narrative rather than my actual needs or desires. After thanking Aunt Rosa for the heads up, I immediately tried calling my parents. Straight to voicemail on both phones. I tried 3 more times with the same result. Just as I was contemplating whether to throw my phone across my office, a group text appeared from my mother's number. Christmas planning update. Secret Santa assignments below. Remember $75 limit and no gift cards this year. Looking at you, Uncle Tony. Jessica, You have your cousin Maria. Can't. Attached was a detailed schedule that made my head spin. Christmas Eve dinner for 30 people, midnight mass, Christmas morning family breakfast, afternoon gift exchange with assigned roles for each family member, evening dinner with the neighbors, and a late-night family game tournament. My name appeared throughout the schedule, assigned to bring specific dishes, help with decorations, and participate in each activity as if I'd been consulted and had agreed to everything. They never intended to have a quiet Christmas. Dad's phone call had been designed to make me feel heard and considered, while they continued planning the exact opposite of what he'd suggested. They wanted me to feel like my voice mattered while completely ignoring what I'd thought we'd agreed on. I stared at my phone, cycling between rage, disbelief, and that familiar feeling of being gaslit by the people who were supposed to love me most. There was only one thing to do. I left work early, telling my manager Alex that I had a family emergency. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was indeed a family emergency, just not the kind that usually qualifies for leaving before a major deadline. The flight from Seattle to Phoenix gave me 3 hours to rehearse what I wanted to say. I practiced Dr. Martinez's suggested phrases. I feel confused when our agreements aren't honored, instead of "you're lying manipulative people," and "I need clarity about our communication," instead of "what the hell is wrong with you?" By the time I landed at Sky Harbor Airport, sunset was painting the desert mountains in shades of gold and pink. The familiar Phoenix landscape used to represent comfort and home to me. Now it felt like entering a battlefield where I'd lost too many wars. The drive to my parents' house in Scottsdale gave me more time to prepare mentally. The neighborhood was transformed into a holiday wonderland, with each house trying to outdo the next with elaborate light displays and decorations. And then I saw my childhood home, visible from 2 blocks away like a beacon of excessive Christmas spirit. Every surface of the adobe-style house was covered in lights. The front yard had been transformed into a winter wonderland complete with artificial snow, despite the 75-degree weather. A life-size nativity scene dominated one corner, while a collection of inflatable decorations bobbed in the evening breeze. A professionally made sign reading, "Rodriguez Family Christmas Extravaganza 2025, stood prominently in the center of the yard. So much for a quiet Christmas. I parked in the driveway behind Dad's truck and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. This confrontation wasn't just about Christmas plans. It was about years of manipulation, of my feelings being treated as secondary to the family's public image and Mom's vision of how things should be. Mom answered the door wearing a festive apron, flour dusting her perfectly styled hair. Her surprise at seeing me quickly transformed into theatrical delight. "Jessica, what a wonderful surprise. I was just making your favorite tamales for Christmas Eve." She moved to pull me into a hug, but I stepped back. "We need to talk," I said, walking past her into the house where I'd grown up. The interior was even more Christmas-intensive than the exterior. Every surface held holiday decorations, Santos and angels mixed with Santas and snowmen in a cultural holiday fusion that had always felt overwhelming to me. The massive tree in the living room was already up and fully decorated, though Christmas was still over a week away. The house smelled like cinnamon and masa, scents that once meant comfort, but now felt suffocating. Dad looked up from his recliner, remote control in hand. "Jessica, we weren't expecting you until Christmas Eve." His smile faltered when he registered my expression. "Why did you call me about having a quiet Christmas when you clearly had no intention of doing that?" I asked, pulling out my phone to show them the detailed schedule Mom had sent. "This is the opposite of quiet." Mom's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, recognition, then something that looked rehearsed. "Oh, Mija, when your father said quiet, we meant peaceful. You know, having peace and harmony during Christmas instead of any of those little misunderstandings we sometimes have. Family together, but with good energy." "That's not what Dad said," I insisted. "He said quiet Christmas, just the 3 of us, no big production." And I agreed to that. Now I find out you've planned the biggest Christmas celebration in family history and told everyone I'm going through a phase and don't want to participate in family traditions. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner. "Your mother just wants the family together, Mija. You know how important Christmas is to her. Jessica, Mom said, her eyes beginning to well with tears right on cue. I'd seen this performance countless times before. We just don't understand why you're pulling away from the family. Christmas is about being together, celebrating our traditions. I thought if everyone was here, you'd remember how much you love these celebrations. Remember how much I love them? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Mom, I never said I loved them. I've been telling you for years that they stress me out. That's why I thought Dad's suggestion was so great. Finally, we could have Christmas without all the pressure and performance. Well, you didn't really think we'd cancel our family Christmas traditions, Mom said, as if I was being completely unreasonable. These are the traditions your grandmother started, that I grew up with. Everyone's expecting to see you. I've already told them about your promotion at work and how you're going to help me make the mole just like Abuela taught us. The manipulation was so blatant, it was almost impressive. First, my promotion was still confidential at work. I hadn't told her about it yet. She'd clearly been talking to my cousin Elena, who worked at a competing tech company and somehow had insider information about industry moves. Second, I'd never successfully made mole in my life, having burned it spectacularly the one time I'd tried to help her cook it years ago. There's something else you should know, Dad interjected, looking extremely uncomfortable. Your mother thought it would be nice to invite David to join us for Christmas dinner. David, my ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago. The one Mom still referred to as such a good match for you, despite the fact that we'd broken up because he'd wanted me to move back to Phoenix and give up my career to start a family immediately. You invited my ex-boyfriend to Christmas dinner? I could barely get the words out. As a surprise, Mom clasped her hands together, her face lighting up with what she clearly thought was brilliant matchmaking. He's been asking about you, and he's doing so well with his accounting practice now. He always loved our family Christmas celebrations, and I thought maybe seeing him again would help you remember what's really important in life. The room started to spin around me. This went beyond normal holiday manipulation into complete disregard for my autonomy, my feelings, and my explicitly stated life choices. If you really loved your family, Mom continued, her voice quivering with practiced emotion, you'd want to be here for Christmas. Family comes first, Jessica. Always. That's what our culture teaches us, what your grandparents taught me. And there it was, the emotional blackmail tactic I'd been learning to recognize in therapy, wrapped in cultural guilt for extra impact. If you really loved your family, as if love was measured by my willingness to surrender my boundaries and submit to their manipulation. I'm not coming to this Christmas, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the trembling I felt inside. Not because I don't love you, but because this isn't love. This is control, and I deserve better than being manipulated and having my words twisted. I turned and walked toward the door as Mom began to cry in earnest, and Dad called after me. Jessica, don't be like this. Come back and let's talk about this like adults. Driving away from their Christmas wonderland toward my hotel, I'd been smart enough to book a room rather than assume I'd be staying with them. Tears blurred my vision. But for the first time after a confrontation with my parents, underneath the hurt and anger, I felt something else. Relief. By the time I reached my hotel room near the airport, emotional exhaustion had set in completely. I kicked off my shoes, collapsed onto the generic hotel bed, and finally allowed myself to break down completely. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside, years of pent-up frustration, disappointment, and grief for the relationship with my parents that I'd always wanted, but never seemed able to have. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Mom, ranging from tearful apologies to subtle guilt trips to outright emotional manipulation. We just want to see our daughter at Christmas. Is that so wrong? Your grandmother is so disappointed. She might not have many Christmases left. David was so excited about seeing you again. I already told him you'd be here. Everyone is asking what happened to make you so angry with your family. Each message was designed to twist the emotional knife a little deeper, to make me question whether I was being unreasonable, selfish, or cruel. I called Dr. Martinez's after-hours line, something I'd never done before in 3 years of therapy. You're not overreacting, Jessica, she assured me after I recounted the day's events. What you're describing is a clear pattern of emotional manipulation and boundary violations. Setting boundaries with family isn't rejecting them. It's asking for a healthier relationship based on mutual respect rather than control. But what if they're right? I whispered into the phone. What if I am being selfish? It's just a few days of Christmas. Maybe I should just suck it up and go along with it like I always have. Is it really just about Christmas?
Dr. Martinez asked gently.
Or is it about your right to make choices about your own life without being manipulated and guilt-tripped into compliance? The question hung in the air as I considered years of similar situations. Christmas was just the most obvious battleground. The real war was about my autonomy, my right to be heard and respected as an adult. My hotel room phone rang. Maya had tracked me down after my emergency text. "I'm flying down," she announced without preamble. "I already booked a flight for tomorrow morning. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." "Maya, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. That's what friends are for. Besides, I've been wanting to see Phoenix, and now I have the perfect excuse." Her immediate support made me tear up again, but this time with gratitude instead of despair. The next morning, Maya arrived like a cavalry charge, armed with coffee, pastries, and a fierce protective energy that made me feel less alone in the world. "Okay, fill me in on everything," she said, settling into the hotel room's uncomfortable chair while I sat cross-legged on the bed. I recounted the entire saga, watching her expression grow increasingly outraged. "They invited David?" she interrupted. "Your ex who wanted you to give up your career? That's not just crossing a line, that's obliterating it with a bulldozer. And that phone call about a quiet Christmas was clearly manipulation from the start," she continued after I'd finished the whole story. "They're gaslighting you into thinking you misunderstood something that was perfectly clear." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone chimed with messages from relatives. "Your mother is heartbroken, Jessica. Christmas means everything to her."
Uncle Roberto.
"We're all worried about you, Mija. This isn't like you."
Cousin Elena.
"Don't be so hard on your parents. They just want what's best for you." Aunt Carmen. Each message made me question my reality a little more. Was I the villain in this story? Was I destroying my family's happiness over something trivial? Then came a different message from my cousin Sophia in Los Angeles. "I talked to your mom. I understand why you're upset. Do what's right for you, not what makes everyone else comfortable. Some of us get it." That small validation felt like oxygen to someone who'd been drowning. Maya scrolled through my social media while I picked at the hotel breakfast. "Your mom's already posting about Christmas preparations," she reported. 3 photo albums worth. And she's tagged you in everything. Sure enough, Mom's Facebook page had become a shrine to Christmas preparations. Photos of the guest room, getting ready for Jessica's visit. Pictures of my childhood ornaments with captions about, "Hoping to see these on the tree when our daughter comes home." Posts about David helping Dad hang exterior lights for our Christmas reunion. The public narrative was being established. I was the ungrateful daughter who needed to come to her senses and return to the family fold, and everyone who mattered to my parents would see that story playing out in real time. "This is so manipulative, it's almost artistic," Maya said, shaking her head. "She's creating public pressure for you to comply." That afternoon, Maya and I drove around Phoenix, visiting places I'd loved as a child, the Desert Botanical Garden, South Mountain Park, the old neighborhoods where my grandparents had lived. Being in these places with someone who supported me unconditionally helped me remember who I was outside of my family's expectations and drama. "You know what strikes me about all this?" Maya said as we hiked a trail overlooking the city. "In all the stories you've told me about your family, I've never heard you describe a single holiday where you felt genuinely happy and relaxed." She was right. Every Christmas memory I had was tinged with anxiety, performance pressure, or outright conflict. I'd normalized the stress so completely that I'd forgotten that holidays could be joyful. That evening, I drafted a careful email to my parents. "Mom and Dad, I love you both, and that love is not conditional on my participation in events that cause me distress." When Dad called suggesting a quiet Christmas, I agreed, because it sounded like you were finally hearing what I've been trying to tell you for years, that our traditional celebrations are overwhelming and stressful for me. Instead of honoring that agreement, you planned an even bigger celebration and created a narrative about me that isn't true. I'm not going through a phase, and I'm not rejecting family traditions out of spite. I'm asking for holidays that feel peaceful and authentic rather than performative and pressured. I won't be attending Christmas this year. This isn't about punishing you. It's about respecting myself enough to maintain the boundaries I've tried to communicate. I've made other plans based on our agreement about a quiet Christmas, and I intend to keep them. I love you, and I hope we can work toward a relationship based on mutual respect rather than guilt and manipulation. I'd be happy to visit in January, when we can hopefully have a calmer conversation.
Love.
Jessica. Hitting send felt like dropping a weight I'd been carrying for years. For the first time in my adult life, I'd stated my position clearly without apologizing for having won. Maya and I spent the next few days exploring Arizona, visiting Sedona's red rocks and taking long hikes in the desert. Being in the landscape of my childhood with someone who accepted me exactly as I was felt healing in a way I hadn't expected. On December 23rd, we flew back to Seattle together. I'd offered Maya my guest room for the holidays since her own family was scattered across the country, and she'd enthusiastically accepted. "So, what's the plan for Christmas?" she asked as we settled into my apartment. "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "I've never had a Christmas that wasn't dictated by family obligations. What do people do when they're free to choose?" "Whatever makes them happy," Maya said simply. "What sounds good to you?" For the first time, I got to answer that question honestly. I'd like to sleep in, make pancakes, maybe watch movies, go for a walk. Keep it simple. "That sounds perfect," Maya said. "Simple can be wonderful." Christmas Eve morning, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in years. No schedule to follow, no dishes to prepare, no family dynamics to navigate. The absence of obligation felt almost surreal. Maya and I made breakfast together, then walked through my neighborhood to Green Lake. Seattle was quiet and peaceful, with just a few other people enjoying the mild winter day. We talked about everything and nothing, the kind of easy conversation that's only possible when no one's trying to manage or manipulate the interaction. That afternoon, we went to a movie, something I'd never done on Christmas Eve in my life. We bought way too much popcorn and candy, sat in the nearly empty theater, and laughed at a ridiculous romantic comedy that had nothing to do with Christmas or family obligations. My phone buzzed occasionally with updates from Phoenix. Cousin Sophia sent supportive messages. "Dinner is chaos here. You made the right choice. Mom and Tia Carmen are arguing about whose tamales are more authentic, and David looks like he wants to disappear." A pang of something, not quite guilt, but a complex mix of sadness and relief, hit me when I read about David's discomfort. Not because I felt responsible for it, but because I realized how often I'd accepted being uncomfortable in similar situations, thinking it was just the price of family harmony. Mom sent a photo of an empty chair at the dinner table with the caption, "Missing our Jessica," a classic guilt tactic that would have devastated me in previous years. This time, I simply turned off notifications and rejoined Maya's laughter at another terrible holiday movie. That evening, Maya and I cooked dinner together. Nothing elaborate, just pasta and salad and good wine. We talked about our friendship, our work, our dreams for the future. For the first time during a Christmas Eve, I felt present and peaceful instead of anxious and performative. "You know what's amazing?" Maya said as we cleaned up the dishes. "You seem completely different than you did in Phoenix. More relaxed. More yourself." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally experiencing Christmas instead of surviving it." Christmas morning dawned clear and bright in Seattle. Maya and I exchanged small gifts, books we'd thought the other would enjoy, nothing elaborate or expensive, just tokens of affection and understanding. No one questioned whether my gifts were appropriate or expensive enough. No one suggested that my choices reflected poorly on my character or priorities. We made pancakes from scratch, played board games, and went for a long walk around the neighborhood. The profound peace I felt wasn't just about avoiding conflict. It came from being authentic and accepted. This is the best Christmas I've ever had, I told Maya as we sat on my couch that evening, watching the lights twinkle on the Seattle skyline. Really? She asked. Even though it's just us? Even though you're not with family? Especially because of that, I said and realized I meant it completely. This is the first Christmas where I've felt like myself instead of playing a role someone else wrote for me. More messages had arrived from family throughout the day. Some were supportive, others heavy with guilt. Dad's brief text, "Your mother is trying her best, Mija," nearly pulled me back into the familiar pattern of prioritizing Mom's feelings over my own well-being. But surrounded by the comfort of my own space and the warmth of genuine friendship, I found it easier to maintain perspective. This wasn't about rejecting my family or my culture. It was about creating space for a healthier relationship with both. That night, as Maya and I shared stories about past Christmases, I realized something important. I wasn't alone in navigating complicated family dynamics. Maya told me about her parents' messy divorce and how holidays had become a competition for her attention. She described years of feeling guilty no matter which parent she chose to spend time with, and how she finally started alternating years and refusing to feel bad about it. How did you get to that point? I asked. How did you stop feeling guilty about protecting yourself? I realized that feeling guilty was just a habit, Maya said. It wasn't actually helping anyone, including my parents. When I stopped letting guilt drive my decisions, my relationships with both of them actually got better. Her words echoed something Dr. Martinez had told me. Guilt is often just the tool we've been taught to use to keep ourselves in line with other people's expectations. A week after Christmas, I returned to work feeling like a different person than the one who'd left for the holidays. The experience of choosing authenticity over obligation had changed something fundamental in how I saw myself and my relationships. In my first therapy session of the new year, I shared the entire Christmas story with Dr. Martinez. I feel guilty for saying this, I admit it, but it was the best Christmas I've ever had. Why should you feel guilty about that? She asked. Because Christmas is supposed to be about family. And weren't you with family in Seattle? Maybe not biological family, but someone who cares about you and accepts you as you are? Her reframing helped me see that I hadn't rejected family. I'd expanded my definition to include the family I'd chosen, the people who loved me without conditions or demands for performance. 2 weeks into January, an unexpected email arrived from Dad. Jessica, I've been thinking a lot about what happened at Christmas. Your mother and I talked, and we both realized we handled things wrong. When I called you about a quiet Christmas, I meant it. But then your mother got excited about having everyone together, and I didn't want to disappoint her. I should have called you back to discuss the change instead of letting you find out the way you did. I don't think we always see when we're being manipulative, but I understand why you felt that way. Your mother shows love by bringing people together and taking care of them. When you don't participate, she feels like she's failing as a mother. That's not your responsibility to fix, I know, but maybe it helps explain why she reacts the way she does. We miss you. Maybe we can try again, with a different approach.
Dad.
The email wasn't perfect. It still partially justified their behavior and didn't fully acknowledge the pattern of manipulation I'd experienced over the years. But it was the most genuine communication I'd received from either parent in a long time, and the first time Dad had ever directly acknowledged that Mom might have been wrong about something. With Dr. Martinez's help, I crafted a response that was both compassionate and clear about my boundaries.
Dad.
Thank you for your email. I appreciate you acknowledging that things went wrong, and I'm glad you understand why I felt misled. You're right that Mom shows love through bringing people together, but I need you both to understand that love also means respecting someone's choices and boundaries. I can love our family deeply, while also needing holidays that feel peaceful rather than stressful. I'd like to try rebuilding our relationship too. Maybe we could start with smaller visits that aren't tied to major holidays, so there's less pressure on everyone. I could come visit for a weekend in March, just the three of us, and we could see how that goes. I love you both, and I hope we can find a way to have a relationship that works for everyone. Jessica. A few days later, Mom called. Her voice was subdued, less dramatic than usual. I got your email, she said. I don't understand why you don't like our Christmas celebrations, but your father says I need to respect your feelings even if I don't understand them. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was progress. For Mom, acknowledging that my feelings were valid even when she didn't understand them was a significant step. I'd like to see you in March, she continued. Maybe we could go to that new art museum you mentioned, just the three of us. I'd like that, I said and meant it. As February progressed, I found myself approaching all my relationships with greater clarity and confidence. I set boundaries with a demanding project manager at work. I had an honest conversation with Maya about a dynamic in our friendship that had been bothering me. I even went on a few dates with someone I met at a coffee shop, someone who respected my career and my need for independence. Each small act of self-advocacy built on the last, creating a foundation of self-respect that felt solid and empowering. In late February, I sent my parents a photo of myself hiking in the Cascade Mountains, smiling genuinely, with the snow-capped peaks in the background. Looking forward to seeing you both in March, I wrote. I hope we can start some new traditions together. Mom's response was predictably mixed. Happiness about seeing me, some subtle pressure about Easter plans, and a few comments about how much she'd learned about boundaries from reading articles Dad had shared with her. But this time, her attempts at control didn't send me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. I simply noted them, reminded myself of my boundaries, and responded only to the parts of her message that felt genuine. Looking back at Dad's phone call that started this whole journey, let's have a quiet Christmas this year, I realized the irony. By refusing to honor their own suggestion, my parents had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, the courage to create the peaceful Christmas I'd always wanted. True peace, I now understood, doesn't come from avoiding conflict or surrendering to manipulation. It comes from being authentic even when it's difficult, from maintaining boundaries even when they're challenged, and from building a life that reflects your values rather than someone else's expectations. As I finalized plans for my March visit with my parents, a weekend trip with clear start and end times, staying in a hotel, with activities we'd all agreed on in advance, I felt calm and centered. This journey toward healthier family relationships wasn't over. Maintaining boundaries is ongoing work, especially with people who've spent years learning how to circumvent them. But for the first time, I felt equipped to navigate these relationships without losing myself in the process. And next Christmas? My parents said, let's have a quiet Christmas this year. I agreed. They had other plans,